Okay, so I know there are a lot of coffee lovers out there. You may be one of them. I was one of them. I had my first cappuccino when I was 15, and I quickly took a liking to my weekly cup of coffee, which then became a morning cup of coffee, or two, once I began working in radio, writing and reading the breakfast news where I had to start work at 4 a.m. But when I hit 34, I realised that coffee was no longer for me, not even an occasional one. In this week's episode on I Love Me, the podcast, I share why I gave up coffee and why you may like to do the same.
Love, 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 I love me.
Simple, inspiring lessons in self-love. Hi, beautiful. It's Tamara here. I remember the exact moment I gave up coffee. It was when I was 34. I just bought a really good organic coffee from my favorite organic cafe, and I was walking home with my now husband drinking it. I got through about half of the cup, and I just felt done. I didn't want the rest. So I put my half-finished coffee in the bin, and I never went back for more. That's almost 10 years ago now, and I haven't had a coffee since. And in all honesty, I don't even miss it. Now, I wasn't trying to give up coffee that day, but that time in my life, I was only having a coffee maybe once a week. It wasn't a regular thing for me anymore because in my 20s, I'd suffered with suicidal depression. And one of the things I realized was that coffee made the depression worse. In fact, coffee not only made the depression worse, it made me anxious. And this is because even if you don't have any mental health issues, coffee puts the body into a low-level state of anxiety. And that's because coffee is a stimulant. Maybe you've noticed after a coffee or three, you feel a bit jittery. Or perhaps it only happens when you have a really strong coffee. Or maybe coffee has become such a regular in your life that you don't even notice the jittery effect it has on your body anymore. Even if you're totally unaware of how coffee affects your body, even if you're numb to that feeling, it's still putting the body into a state of anxiety. You don't notice it because that low-level state of anxiety has become your norm, your base level for existing. Why is this a problem? Because caffeine stimulates our fight or flight response. And studies now show that this can trigger anxiety and even an anxiety attack. Anxiety itself comes from our subconscious conditioning, our beliefs, and subsequent thought patterns. We believe things about ourselves and our life that cause us to worry about what might or might not happen next. You can learn more about our subconscious programming in episode 2, Programmed for Love. And I've also dedicated episode 31 to learning more about anxiety with a great exercise for overcoming anxiety in under 2 minutes. I'll put a link to both of those episodes in the show notes. So while coffee is not responsible for creating the type of anxiety most people experience, our subconscious programming is, coffee can trigger it or make it worse in people who are prone to experiencing anxiety. Coffee can also make you feel anxious even when you have nothing to feel anxious about. Now, this is quite a problem because when the body's in an anxious state, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, it doesn't work properly. Your body is too busy pouring its energy into firing up your adrenal system, your flight or fight mode, that there's little energy to keep your immune system firing. And because the body's on alert, quality sleep, the type that keeps the body in pristine condition, that sleep goes out the window and is replaced by either a lack of sleep or a lack of quality sleep. What's worse is a lack of quality sleep makes us feel tired, and a tired person is likely to drink more coffee to help pick them up. Sure, it'll give you a little kick, but that little kick is the flight or fight response being activated at the expense of the immune system, thus keeping your body in survival mode. I don't know about you, but I kind of want my immune system working as it's meant to. Now, the more we live from this anxious state, the more the body tenses up to reflect this. The more tension we store in the body, the less blood flow there is, and the more our organs become constricted. We essentially suffocate our body into illness and disease. The hard truth is, anxiety hurts the body. A very rare or even occasional bout of anxiety in a resilient body is fine. Our body has built-in mechanisms to support this and help us bounce back. But when anxiety is our baseline state, or we dip into anxiety on a regular basis, we're building up holding patterns in the body that will likely cause other issues further down the track. Okay, so we know coffee wreaks havoc on the physical body. Enough said. But it's not just the physical body that is negatively affected by drinking coffee. The spiritual body cops it too. When we drink coffee, because it puts us into a low-level state of anxiety, it disconnects us from our inner voice, or as I like to call it, our true self. What this means is that when you're drinking coffee, it's far more difficult to tap into your intuitive, all-knowing inner voice, meaning that you'll be guided not from a place of love, but from a place of fear. Yes, your ego will be the one running the show, helping you make all sorts of unhelpful decisions for yourself. Decisions that don't serve you or your loved ones. I'll talk more about the ego next week. In my courses, The Way of Self-Love and Remarkable Relationships, where I teach people how to access this inner voice of wisdom, I encourage the participants to get off coffee, because if they don't, they find it a lot harder to get a clear line of communication with their true self. And because of this, clearing limiting beliefs and gaining insight into their lives, it generally becomes foggy and more complicated. You can make it easy to listen to your inner voice, or you can make it hard by drinking caffeine-rich substances that disconnect you. And this is why when I work with people one-on-one, coffee is the first thing to go, because it stops us from being able to listen to our body's signals. Like when our body tells us we need sleep, having a coffee blanks out that feeling of fatigue. And because it stops us from being able to listen to our inner guidance system. Now, I'll be honest, there is always resistance to giving up coffee to begin with. Like, a lot of resistance. You're probably thinking right now, I love what Tamara shares, but you know what? I might stick with my coffee. Yet every person I work with who is willing to try giving up coffee, even though they initially resist it, is so grateful afterwards because they feel such a big difference. What's super interesting is when a person comes off coffee, if they do have one after being coffee-free for at least a month, they notice the effects immediately. It's really common for one of my clients who has stopped drinking coffee to say to me, I've been feeling so good, and then on the weekend I started to feel really anxious again. I always ask, what were you doing half an hour before you started to feel anxious? And 99% of the time, the answer is, oh, I met up with my friend for a coffee. When I point this out, immediately they get it. The proof really is in the experience. Once you get off coffee, because anxiety is no longer your baseline state, as soon as the coffee enters your system, you feel its effects instantly. You become more sensitive to how things affect you, which is a good thing because that extra sensitivity helps you know how to treat your body better, to treat your body with more love and more kindness. So instead of always feeling a little anxious and a little tired and using coffee to keep picking you up, propping you up, you start to experience what it's like to feel alive and energized and, shall we say, normal. But you may say, Tamara, I need my coffee to wake me up in the morning. Really? If this is the case, it means that you're not giving your body the sleep or nutrients or love it needs, because you should never need anything to wake you up. A healthy, functioning body wakes up feeling vitally alive and energized. And if that's not how you feel most mornings, then that's an indication that some things in your life need to shift to support your body in functioning as it was designed. Okay, so how do you get off coffee? Firstly, you need to decide that giving up coffee is worth it. Without that initial decision, for it is a decision, you won't commit to going coffee-free for any length of time. Once you make that decision, then you need to do it gradually. Otherwise, you're likely to be met with some uncomfortable side effects like headaches. When I guide my clients off coffee, I get them to start by halving the amount they're currently having. So if you're drinking 2 cups a day, take it down to 1 and do that for a couple of weeks. If you're only having 1 coffee per day, either have half a coffee a day or 1 coffee every second day, whichever feels better for you. After a couple of weeks, once you find your groove, once that new amount of coffee feels manageable, halve it again. Then a couple of weeks later, halve it again, and keep doing this until you're not having any coffee at all. The other thing you need to do as you go through this halving process is substitute the other coffees you would usually have with something else. It's not just the caffeine addiction we need to overcome, it's the habit or ritual of drinking coffee. Maybe you switch your coffee for a green or herbal tea. That would be the best approach. But if that's just too far of a reach for you, switch it for a black tea or a chai. Yes, black tea has caffeine in it, although it's less, and it interacts with the body slightly differently, so in most cases, it won't have the same effect on your body. That said, once you get off coffee, you'll become far more sensitive to what you put in your body, and with time, you may find that black tea also has a more subtle effect on your body. That was certainly the case for me. I went for many years where I had a black tea maybe once or twice a week, but now I rarely have a black tea, like once a month at most. And if I do have a couple on consecutive days, I do feel that in my body. Either way, black tea is far better than coffee. And this is because tea leaves contain built-in relaxants and antioxidants that work in harmony with caffeine to give you energy, as well as provide relaxing effects that benefit health. So, do what you need to get off the coffee. If you move on to black tea and that becomes your beverage of choice, it's a much more loving beverage to consume. But just remember that herbal teas are even better. Okay, over to you. Are you willing to sit with the idea of giving up coffee? Ponder it, feel into it, and if you're willing to make that decision to get off the coffee, please know this. There is life after coffee. Whether you decide to ease off coffee or not, next week I have a special episode for you. We'll be learning how to love away our ego. For if you had resistance to the whole idea of giving up coffee, you can bet that was thanks to, your ego. Our ego loves to lead us off self-love lane and onto self-sabotage road in all areas of our life. But if you know how to spot when your ego's in the driver's seat, then you can take back the wheel and steer yourself back onto the path of self-love. That's what we'll be exploring next week, so be sure to tune in for that one. Loving what I'm sharing here on I Love Me, the podcast, and want to dive deeper into self-love? Simply take a peek at my online school, gettingnaked.com.au, where I teach you how to strip off the layers of childhood conditioning keeping you from falling in love with you. Sign up for your free self-love starters kit there, and if you do enroll in any of my programs, know that a percentage of profits go to planting trees, so together we can re-robe Mother Earth.